have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed.
And we as a people will get to the promised land.
The Brown v. Board of Education in 1954 was the beginning of desegregation in public schools, as it held that the racial segregation of children in public schools violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Racially segregated schools were legal because of the Plessy v. Ferguson case of 1896, which held that segregated public facilities were constitutional as long as black and white facilities were equal to each other. In Topeka, Kansas, a parent of a child who was denied access to a white school wanted to make a change since his community did not have equal schooling for blacks and whites. His name was Oliver Brown, and he brought the issue to court, and once he was dismissed, he went further to the Supreme Court. Here is where they came to the conclusion that segregated schools violated the 14th Amendment. Public education in the 20th century had become an essential component of a person's life. In this context, any child denied a good education would be unlikely to succeed in life. The court ordered the states to integrate their schools with all deliberate speed. The decision was officially issued May 17th of 1954. One case of integrating schools that came into play shortly after the Brown v. Board case was at Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, known as Little Rock 9. In September of 1957, 9 students had been recruited by Daisy Gadsden Bates. The governor, Orval Faubus, issued the National Guard to prevent the students from entering the school on September 2nd. Their first day was set for September 4th, but once they arrived, the crowd of white people screaming and spitting was seen as a danger to the new students' lives. On September 25th, the students were able to have their first day at a white school. 9 of the students went through various cases of harassment throughout the year. Only one member was able to graduate on May 25th, 1958, as she was older than the rest. After that school year, the governor shut down the school to keep segregation, and the other 8 finished their education at other schools. After that, schools were slowly becoming integrated, with a few blacks coming to different schools. One of the more famous cases was with Ruby Bridges. As a young child, she went through testing to see if she could be placed in a white school. The tests were challenging, and the New Orleans schooling system did that on purpose to keep all white schools white. They were able to say blacks have the chance to go to a white school while at the same time preventing it. Ruby was the only one out of 6 to pass the test, and in 1960, she went to the William Frantz School. On November 14th, she was escorted in by 4 marshals surrounding her. Classes were not held due to the lack of attendance, as white parents made their children stay home. Only one teacher, Barbara Henry, agreed to teach Ruby, and they had a private class as all the other children were pulled out. Ruby was separated from all the children and was always guarded. Eventually, more kids showed up, and as the year went on, she became well known, and she came back for another year and started to experience life normally. Today, she is one of many who publicly speak about her experience as she empowers others and is a role model to many.
On August 28, 1963, 250,000 people participate with the March on Washington. The March on Washington was to show the support for President Kennedy's Civil Rights Bill. The bill requested that black people were given the right to use public facilities. The civil rights in America were greatly progressing, and more people wanted to see equal rights for black people. People, white and black, both participated in this march. Many different civil rights activist groups participated in this march to highlight civil rights issues and economic problems that would go beyond JFK's bill. President JFK did try to put a stop to the march because of the riots that may break out and the violence that would be caused. But when the civil rights leaders met with him and he was reassured to know that they were supportive of the bill, he thought it had to go on. People came from all over the country to provide support. This was where the famous speech of Martin Luther King Jr. took place, which was his I Have a Dream speech. Although the March on Washington did not have an immediate impact, it was passed by Congress by Johnson because of the assassination of President Kennedy. The March on Washington was a huge impact for the civil rights movement because black people were finally allowed to use public facilities.
The Ku Klux Klan, or the KKK, was a white supremacist group that used extreme terror and violence to suppress African Americans and whites who supported them. Being in complete opposition to the civil rights movement, the group used violent tactics to intimidate blacks from using their new rights. Among these tactics were school burnings, church burnings, bombings, and even murder. The Klan was a secret fraternal organization that promoted segregation and advocated for what they saw as the best interests of the white race. One of the more prominent sectors of the Klan was centered in Tuscaloosa, Alabama during the mid-1900s, and included more than 5,000 members as it grew during the 1960s. The organization adopted the recognizable white costume to cover the faces of its members, as they were too afraid to commit such horrible acts openly. The KKK did not hesitate to kill African American women, children, community leaders, and politicians, as the hate group was made up of a multitude of white law enforcement figures.
The Montgomery boycott was a political and social protest campaign against the policy of racial segregation in the public transportation system in Montgomery, Alabama. The campaign started on December 5, 1955, when Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her seat to a white person. This boycott ended on December 20, 1956, when a Supreme Court decision declared that the Alabama and Montgomery laws about segregated buses were unconstitutional. During the Montgomery bus boycott, African Americans refused to ride buses in Montgomery to protest segregated seating. The U.S. Supreme Court ultimately ordered Montgomery to integrate its bus system. Martin Luther King Jr. was one of the leaders of the boycott, who soon became a prominent national leader of the American Civil Rights Movement. In 1955, it is still required for African Americans living in the city of Montgomery to sit in the back half of the bus, while white people get to sit in the front half. Rosa Parks was returning home from her job at a local department store, and she was sitting in the front row of the colored section. The bus driver asked her and two others to get it from their seats because the white seats were all filled. Rosa Parks refused to move. She was arrested and fined for not moving. 9 months before this, a 15-year-old girl, Claudette Colvin, was arrested for the same act. On June 5, 1956, a Montgomery federal court ruled that any law requiring racially segregated seating on buses violated the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. The amendment guarantees all citizens, regardless of race, equal rights and equal protection under state and federal laws. Montgomery's buses were integrated on December 21st, 1956, and the boycott ended. It had lasted 381 days.
The integration of the University of Mississippi, nicknamed Ole Miss, is one of the important but lesser-known events of the civil rights movement. After high school, James Meredith, an African-American man, spent 9 years in the United States Air Force. He later attended the all-black Jackson State College in Mississippi. In 1961, however, Meredith applied to the all-white University of Mississippi, to which he was accepted before his race was discovered and his acceptance withdrawn. Because the 1954 Brown v. Board of Education ruling had required that all public educational institutions be desegregated, Meredith waged a legal battle. His case was taken to the Supreme Court and ruled upon in his favor. On September 20th, 1962, Meredith arrived at Ole Miss and found the entrance blocked by Governor Ross Barnett, who attempted to defy the Supreme Court decision. On the 30th, Meredith returned, this time escorted by U.S. Marshals sent by Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy. Rioting erupted among a mob of 2,000 students and others. 2 were killed as well as a number of others injured. President John F. Kennedy sent military police, troops from the Mississippi National Guard, and the U.S. Border Patrol to help calm the situation. The next day, on October 1st, James Meredith successfully enrolled at the university, becoming Ole Miss's first black student.